press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.
Hello my dear students. Today I am going to start with the new chapter, the living organisms and their surroundings. See, in our surrounding there are varieties of living organisms are present. Not only dogs, animals, birds and different types of organisms will be present. And these organisms sometimes we can see in our naked eyes, where sometimes we can't be able to see in our naked eyes. See, those organisms are called as bacteria, fungi, and such organisms are also called as microorganisms. And these microorganisms only we can see through under the microscope. See, such organisms are called as microorganisms. See, different varieties of organisms are present in the nature, and in our surrounding also we can see varieties of organisms like dog, cat and different varieties of birds, and not only these organisms, different types of plants will be present, trees are there, and like that different types of organisms which survive in this universe. And here, before going to start with the lesson, let us learn some key learning points here, in which first one is the diversity of the habitat. See, habitat is nothing but the place where the living organisms will be survive. And in this lesson we will learn about the diversity of the different types of organisms, like camel which is live in the desert region, and the body structure is also modified, where the hump will be present and the legs will be modified into different hooves, and like that different varieties of organisms which adjust to particular environment. And see, this is how the diversity and the varieties of habitat we will learn. And like that, fishes also which swim in the water, and birds which fly in the air, and usually they keep their nest in the trees. And like that, different habitat we have to learn in this lesson. And next one is the adaptation. See, adaptation means nothing but the organisms which is adapted to particular environment. See, for example, if winter season will be there, some birds will be moved to another place where the summer season will be present, and thereby the exchange will be takes place according to the adaptation, according to the proper breeding purpose and food purpose also, and from the predator also the adaptation is different. And next one is the components of the habitat. See, in the components of the habitat, there are different components will be present. For example, abiotic as well as the biotic factors comes under this heading, components of the food. See, components of the habitat is nothing but the biotic as well as the abiotic factor. See, biotic is nothing but the habitat which is present in the biotic way, that is plants as well as the animal. Biotic is the plant as well as the animal. Such a type of habitat are called as biotic habitat, where the plants and the animals which lives in the particular habitat. This is the components of the habitat. As I told you, biotic is the animals as well as the plants having the habitat. And some plants which present in the desert region, like cactus, which can't be able to present in particular or the winter or like Kashmir, which can't be hold to withstand. See, like that different plants as well as the animal to adjust in a particular place, and thereby it will survive. And as I told you, biotic factors or the biotic habitat. And next one is the abiotic habitat will be there. Abiotic is nothing but the rocks, mountains and different types of things will be comes under this abiotic factors or the abiotic habitat. And next one is the characteristic features of the living organisms. See, in the very first chapter we will learn about the characteristic features of the living organisms. See, like that there are different characteristic features of living organisms which can be distinguished from non-living things or the non-living organisms. See, like that for example, living things will breathe, living things will walk from one place to the another place, and even the plants comes under this living things also. It will also, it can't be moved, but movements will be takes place in them also, in plants also, and thereby we can distinguish the living things or the living organisms from the non-living organisms. See, in this chapter, these are all the key learning points which comes under this chapter. See, one by one I will read here. Diversity of the habitat. There are varieties of the habitat which are present in the environment. We have seen different types of habitat like camel, like penguin, which is present in a particular habitat, and if we keep the penguin in a desert region, it can't be survived, because it is the body of the penguin is modified in particular place. So that's why it can't be stand or survive in this. It can't be stand or survive in such areas, and like that, camel can't be live in the polar region. See, like that, there are different types of animals which is having the diversity of an habitat. And next one is the adaptation. Particular animals adapt to particular situation and the climatic condition, and thereby the adaptation we will learn in this chapter. And next one is the components of the habitat, abiotic components as well as the biotic components, which comes under this heading. And next one is the characteristic features of the living organisms. There are different types of characteristic features will be there. Living things can be breathe, living things can walk one place to the another place in search of the food and some work purpose, and from protect himself or itself from the predators or from the enemies, and for breeding purpose also it will move from one place to the another place. And living things can reproduce, means gives birth to young ones, and these are the characteristic features, some of these characteristic features which can be distinguished from non-living things. See, this is all about the key learning points. Next we shall move on to the organisms. See, as I told you, organisms is nothing but all the living beings like plants, living beings like plants, animals, plants, animals and bacteria etc. are called as organisms. And organisms are all living beings, means which have the life, and like plants, animals are called as organisms. See, next we shall move on to the adaptation. Adaptation is nothing but the organisms which help to survive in its surrounding. Organisms which helps to survive in the surrounding. In the surroundings are called as habitat. Adaptation, sorry. See, adaptation is nothing but the organisms which helps to survive in the surroundings are called as adaptation. Or in another definition of the habitat, adaptation is the organisms which helps to survive in a particular place is also called as adaptation. See, this is how we can say that adaptation by different types of animals will adapt in a particular area and particular situation, it will adapt in. Next we shall move on to the components of the habitat. Components of the habitat. Before going to the components of the habitat, let us learn about the diversity of the habitat. See, there are different types of animals as well as the plants will be there, which is having the different varieties. For example, in desert region, see, in the desert region, the cactus plants usually grow. Cactus and animals like camel are present. See, due to the lack of water in such a area, this cactus will be present, and this cactus will be present, and also the camel is having such a lack of, or the scarcity of the water will be takes place, and thereby it will adopt it in a desert region, both the cactus as well as the camel. Scarcity or the lack of water. See, lack is nothing but the scarcity of water which is present in the desert region. So that's why the cactus usually grown in such a area. And here the leaves is modified into the spines, and the stem is modified into the leaf-like structure called as a cactus. See, this is how we can say that diversity is different from the different animals. Like cactus is adapted to survive in the desert region, and their body is also different, and it is modified into hump-like structure which is present in the uppermost part of the camel, and which stores the food items. Later I will explain in a deep way about the diversity, that is the desert animals, how they will survive in the desert condition. And this is the diversity of an organisms, animal. And next one is the diversity of a different animals, like in winter or in polar region, the polar bear will be present where cold climate will be there, and there be many plants will be grown, and these plants is different from the desert plant, where the scarcity of water will be takes place in the desert, whereas in polar region or the winter region, the more water will be present, and there is a availability of the water is also more, and thereby we can say that different varieties of habitat will be present, like in plants also and in animals also. See, next one is the components of the habitat, in which first one is the biotic components. Biotic components are the biotic components. Biotic components, as the name only indicates, bio means both the plants as well as the animals and plants. See, biotic components is nothing but those components which is present in the biotic way, that is plants as well as the animals. These are the living organisms. Is it not? These are the living organisms which live in the surrounding. See, biotic components which includes the plant as well as the animals, and these are called as living organisms, and these plants as well as the animals need food to grow and to survive, and depending upon the plants as well as the animals for food, on the basis of habitat, organisms can be divided into four main categories. One is the producer, one is the consumer, first one is the producer, which producers. See, once again I will tell you the components of the habitat, in which first two components is the biotic components. Biotic components includes the plant as well as the animal, and these plants and animals are the living organisms, and these living organisms which needs food to grow and to survive in the environment, and these organisms can be categorized into four main parts. One is the producer. As the name only indicates, it produces the food. Example, plants. All plants comes under this heading, producers, which produce the food items by using the simple substance like carbon dioxide as well as the water, by using the sunlight and the chlorophyll pigment which is present in the leaves. These plants will produce the food, and oxygen will be released to the environment. So that's why it is called as producer. It produces the food by photosynthesis. See, in the previous class, we will learn about the term photosynthesis. Once again I will tell you, photo means light as well as the synthesis means to prepare, and here plants will prepare the food by using the sunlight rays, that is by using the simple substance like water as well as the light. It will synthesize the food and release the oxygen to the environment. Food prepared and oxygen is released to environment. See, this is all about the producers. See, producers, in this heading, all plants will come under this heading, and here food can be produced. The producer which produce the food by using the simple substance like carbon dioxide which is present in the atmosphere, and by using the water, and also by using the light from the sunlight and the chlorophyll pigment. Chlorophyll usually present in the leaves of the green plants, and by using such chlorophyll pigment as well as the sunlight from the sun, these producer will produce the food, and oxygen will be released to the environment. See, this is the definition of the photosynthesis, and here all the plants are also called as producers. And the next one is the consumers. See, in the biotic components, in this heading only, the producer, consumer, and two more factors, two more organisms will be divided. Second one is the consumers. As the name only indicates that it will consume the food in the indirect way. All non-green plants and the animals are called as consumers. Non-green plants comes under this heading, that is consumers, and they depend on the food prepared by the plants. Consumers are depends on food prepared by plants. Prepared by plants. There are of again three types, in which first one is the herbivore. Herbivore. Carnivore. Carnivores. and the decomposers. Say herbivores are those organisms or those animals which feeds on the plants. Feeds on plants. Herbivores are those animals. See, these are the animals which feeds on the plants, and that's why it is called as primary consumers. See, herbivores are those animals which feeds on the plants. Animals which feeds on the plants are called as herbivore. Example for the herbivores are sheep, goat, buffalo. These are few examples of the herbivore. Whereas the carnivores are those animals which depends on the herbivore. And example for the carnivores are the tiger, lion, leopard. Example, these are few examples for the carnivores. And the next one is the decomposers. These are the organisms which depends on the dead and decay organic matter. See, this is the new term for you, dead and decay matter. See, dead and decay means nothing but kolutu hogodu. See, these organisms or the animals which feeds on the dead plants like bacteria and decay, dead and decay matter like plants. If plants will fall onto the ground, and these organisms which feeds on the such plants, and like that if animals will die, these organisms comes and feed to these animals, and thereby we can say that dead and also decayed. Decay animals means spoiling of the matter will feed up by these organisms are called as decomposers. And here herbivore, carnivore and also the omnivores. See, omnivores are those animals which feeds on both the herbivore as well as the carnivore. Example is the dog, cat and even human being also a omnivore. See, this is how we can say that consumers can be classified into three different types. First one is the herbivore, carnivore and as well as the omnivore. See, consumer are those animals with all non-green plants, and the animals are called as consumers, and these consumers which depends on the food prepared by the plants, in which first one is the herbivore. Herbivore animals are those animals which feeds on the plants are called as herbivore. Example is the goat, sheep and buffalo. These are few examples of the herbivore. Next one is the carnivore. See, carnivore are those animals which depends on other animals like herbivore are called as carnivores. Example is that lion, tiger, leopard, cheetah, etc. These are the examples of the carnivore. And the next one is the omnivore. Those animals which eats both the carnivore as well as the herbivore are called as omnivores animal, like dog, cat and even human beings also a omnivore animal. These are the categorization of the consumers. So here herbivore, as I told you, animals which feeds on the plants, and that's why it is called as primary consumer. Next we shall move on to the scavengers. See, third one is the scavengers. Some animals feeds on the dead animals. See, scavengers are those animals. These are also animals which feeds on dead animals. feeds on dead animals. And such a type of animals are called as scavengers. Examples of the vulture, next hyena, hyena, etc. These are few examples of the scavengers. See, next one is the decomposers. See, this is all about the scavengers. Scavengers are nothing but these are the animals which feeds on the dead animals. For example, vulture and the hyena. These are, and even dogs also, which feeds on the dead animals. And such type of organisms or the animals are called as scavengers. Next, last one is the decomposers. See, this one is the last one. In the biotic factor or the biotic components, microorganisms which feeds on the dead bodies of the plants. See, microorganisms which feeds on the dead bodies of plants and animals are called as scavengers, are called as decomposers, and they make them into simple substance are called as decompose. Which makes into simple substance called as decompose. See, decomposers. Decomposers, for example, bacteria and fungi are the example for the decomposers. Example for the decomposers are bacteria and fungi, and all the microorganisms are comes under this heading decomposers. See, decomposers are those organisms which is very minute in nature, and so that's why it is called as microorganisms, which can't be seen through our naked eyes. It can be seen only under the microscope, and here these microorganisms feeds on the dead bodies of the plants as well as the animals. When the plant will be dead after survival, and when the animals also when dead, these organisms comes and feed such animals and plants, and thereby make into the simple substance like decomposers. And these decomposers is very useful, which helps to fertile the soil, and these decomposers which sprinkle the plants to grow more and more, which having the components of the nutrient these decompose content. And here example for these decomposers are bacteria and the fungi. These are the example for the decomposers. See, in the today's class we will learn about the biotic factor as well as the abiotic factor we will learn. See, in this biotic factor, all living organisms like plants as well as the animals will comes under this heading. See, biotic factor which having the microorganisms, and these microorganisms can be classified into four distinct features or the four categorized. And first one is the producer. Producer's name only indicates it will produce the food. By using the photosynthesis, all green plants will produce the food and which may release the oxygen to the environment. So that's why it is called as producers. And next one is the consumers. See, name only indicates that it will consume the animals which prepare the food. Like in this consumer, there are different types of animals comes here. For example, herbivore, carnivore as well as the omnivore. Herbivore are those animals which feeds on the herb or the small plants it will feeds, and such type of animals are called as herbivore animal. For example, goat as well as the sheep, buffalo, these are few examples of a herbivore. Next one is the carnivore animals. These animals which feeds on the herbivore animal are called as carnivore animals. Example is the lion, tiger. These are few examples of a carnivore animal. And the last one is the omnivore animals. Those animals which feeds on the herbivore animal as well as the carnivore animal are called as omnivore animals. Examples of the omnivore animals are the dog, cat, and even human beings also a omnivore animal. And next one is the, see, as I told you, biotic factors which may include the producer, consumer, and next one is the decomposers. Scavengers will be there. See, scavenger are those animals which feeds on the dead animals. Example is the vulture and hyena, and even dog comes under this heading, that is scavenger. And the last one is the decomposers. See, decomposers are the microorganisms which is present in the soil or in the surrounding it is present, and these can't be seen through our naked eyes. It can't be seen. It can be seen only under the microscope. So that's why the organisms are called as microorganisms. Very minute these organisms are there. And here these microorganisms which feeds on the dead bodies of the plants as well as the animals. When the plants will fall onto the ground after completion of their grow, and when it will dead, these organisms will feed to the animals as well as the plants, and which makes the simple substance. By feeding such plants as well as the animals, it will make into the simple substance, and it is called as decomposers. And these decomposers are very rich, which contains the nutrient, and which usually the farmers sprinkle these decomposers or the decomposed soil to the growing plants, so that the plants will grow more and more. And example for those decomposers are bacteria, fungi, and all the microorganisms are the example for the decomposers. So this is all about the biotic factor, and this biotic factor can be categorized into four different types, in which first one is the producer, consumer, and scavengers, and last one is the decomposers. See, in the consumer there are three different types will be categorized. One is the herbivore, carnivore, and the omnivore. So this is all about the today's class. Here I wind up the class. In tomorrow's class we will learn some more concept about this lesson, living organisms and their surrounding. Thank you.